Welcome back into the studio. Lots of you know I like to, especially for beginners and novices, show them how to pick and pull colours out of reference images so that they get a better idea of the colours that they're looking for, because when you're a beginner you can't always easily see subtle differences in colours and hues. So I'm going to jump in. I usually use Photoshop myself, but there's a free application, Pixlr, online, and it does all of this just as well for free. So when you go to pixlr.com, if you click Pixlr E, that's the one you want, not the X, so just pick that, click that. Then when I'm in there, I've just got to click open image, and I'll select an image. Let's select this one, and then you can bring in the image size. Generally it's best to do it the original size, so that's what I'll do now. Apply, there you go. Okay, so there's my image in there, there's my layer by the side showing you, then some adverts down the far right. I think if you pay for the program, probably the adverts go, but for this it doesn't really matter. So what I like to do normally is duplicate that layer, so we make sure this is lit, and then I can come down here and click duplicate. Okay, so that means whatever I do on this top layer won't affect the bottom. Okay, sometimes you may like to compare the two. Now the first thing I want to do is create a border around there, and I'll show you that, how to do that and why. Now I'm not particularly familiar with this program, so you'll have to bear with me, but if you go page, smart resize. Now this image is 3000 pixels by 2487. Now to make it wider, if I go 4000 pixels, you see that dotted border around there now? Okay, and it's linked the aspect ratio as well. That border is a little bit too big, so let's try 3500. Okay, that's about right. So I'll just apply that and you'll see what will happen. So now I've got a border around there. Okay, now I can select a new empty layer, so that plus empty, and I'm going to pick a color. So first of all I'll select my fill tool. Okay, so if you hover over the tools, I'll show you where they are. Fill, you see why I'm going to do this in a moment. And then on this top colored circle, I'm going to click that and pick the color roughly of the paper I'm going to use. So if I'm using pastel matte paper for this one, perhaps I would want to use the light blue paper, my favorite paper at the moment. So the light blue is actually more of a gray with a tiny tinge of blue on it, or in it. Okay, so I'm just going over this color, and I can just find the color that I want. If I was using, say, the sienna paper, I could click down here until I'm going near sienna, and maybe, you know, something like that. But as I said, I'm going to use the blue, and I'm looking at the color on my wall as I'm doing this, and it's more of a gray, and that's roughly it. So I click OK. Remember, I've got that fill tool, and I just click anywhere. All that goes that grey blue, which is almost identical to the pastel matte light blue, but you can't see the bird. So I just go over here to the right to that one that's lit up. That means the layer is selected. I left click and hold it and drag it down below the bird. So now the bird's on top, and you can see my borders underneath. I'm using a scroll mouse with a wheel on, so I can use that wheel to go larger and smaller. Okay, so I'll leave it like that just so you can see that border. Now I want to pull colors out. Sometimes what I like to do, because we can all get confused with the details in the subject, I can blur it out instead. So if I go filter, so look over here, I've selected the vulture, okay, not the grey background, not that, I've selected the vulture, and I'm going to blur it. Filter, I believe it's in details there, Gaussian blur. I'll click that, let's drag that to the side, and now I can increase this till the details go. You see the details are now going, bit more. So details are gone, but now I can see the basic colour, so I could drag that up to 100%. If I click this and hold it, it'll show you before, and now you can see how I've got rid of the details so we can concentrate just on the colours. Apply. Right, now I want to drag my colours out. The grey, the border, that represents my paper colour, and I've done that so that when I drag the colours from the vulture out, I can see what they should look like on my paper. If I'd left the border as white, then that can influence how we're seeing the colours. Okay, so they can make them look different than what they would look on the paper. So what I need to do is flatten this image. Okay, if I don't flatten it, let me show you what happens. I'll select a brush. I'll check the size. It's on 40 at the moment. Let's see what it looks like that size. Okay, that's about right. If I click and hold, let me see what is. I'll just undo this. Bear with me while I try to remember what button I've got to click. Okay, I've remembered it. If I click and hold Control on my keyboard, so I'm holding that button down, I can move my cursor anywhere over the bird or the sky and it'll select the colour. Okay, so if I go, say, here in this creamy white area, I click it, so I'm holding Control down, I click the mouse, let it all go. Okay, and now I can left click and drag it out and draw some of that colour. If I go back then over, say, this more greyed out area of feathers on top of the head, click and hold Control, left click with the mouse, let it all go, left click, hold down to drag it out. So you see I'm starting to build up now a colour swatch. On the keyboard, Control, hold down, left click, see that selects it and it comes at the top then here of these circles, all the circles that I've already picked or looked at or default ones on there. Okay, so I'll come here, click it with my left mouse, let go of everything, and then left click, hold, drag it out. So that's given me the basic colours. Now with these basic colours, and I'll carry on and just get a few more, I can then go into my pencils, little scrap piece of this grey pastel matte or whatever colour I've used, and then I can match up my pencils and just put a little mark or two on the from the pencils onto this greyed pastel matte and select my pencils that way. Select the ones in my set that I've got closest to the colours that I'm pulling out. Okay, so this is an easy, free way of doing what I do on Photoshop. Looks almost identical. Now obviously you can print this out. You've got the usual file print up there as you'd expect. If you're printing it out, use decent photo quality printer paper, because if you print this out and you're going to work from your printout rather than a screen, and your printout doesn't look anything like it does on screen because the paper quality is rubbish, there's no point doing it. Okay, you need a good quality printout for this type of technique to work. If you don't blur the image first, you can get really make it overly complicated and look at every tiny little difference you see in colours. You don't need to do that. We're just looking at the general colours and tones. Okay, so that's why I like to blur the image. You don't have to, but you don't want to be pulling out, as I said, little tiny areas from every section, because that's just going to be no use. It's not going to make it any easier than trying to find the colours off of the reference photo at all. So that's Pixlr way of doing it. As I said, it's almost identical to Photoshop, but this is a free way. So hope that's helped you out. Lots more tips on my Patreon art channel. Just wanted to quickly mention my Patreon channel for those looking for even more in-depth art instruction. It's packed full of pastel videos, oil videos as well, and those videos are being added to new ones every single month. I have videos for the complete beginner that have never done pastels or oils before with just limited supplies, and I take you from the very first blocking in all the way through to the final detailed drawings and paintings. I've also got some really unusual subjects as well, and in all of my videos I always take you through all the details. You see everything I do, how I create my work. But it's not just for beginners, it's also for novices, and I also show the best artwork that I've ever done as well. And this particular elephant video spans 6 hours, so you know you're going to see tons and tons of details, tips and techniques. And as mentioned, I've got lots of oil videos on there too, so there really is something for everybody, and you get access to hundreds of hours worth of videos for just $4. Now over 1,000 members strong. Hope to see you there soon.